Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave Podcast. We are back to discuss the Season 1 finale of Daredevil Born Again. We've been covering this for weeks. Excited for you guys to join us for the conversation. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined, as always, by my buddy, Vinny Albano.
Hello, hello.
Nice to see you again, Vinny.
Yes.
So this is a show that's been very conflicting. For us, for a lot of reasons. Now we did the premiere episode with our buddy John Stowwagon. John, Hope you're doing well. Hope you're watching. Unfortunately, couldn't make it back for the finale. I was hoping he would be able to, but we're gonna see him more on the network in the future. Definitely covering some MCU stuff. But we talked last week specifically about the change of pace in which this show has implemented, and if you guys don't know the details of the restructuring of this show and what came when Marvel had the pause, go back to last week's episode and fast forward to the end. But essentially, long story short, they have a new creative overhaul that comes in for basically the last two episodes. They reshaped the premiere as well, but the final two episodes especially, they had their hands on. Benson and Moorhead, again, the directing duo that did episode 8, they're back for episode 9, the finale. And we talked a little bit off camera the other day when we were recording something else. And for me, it's crazy because it's like the biggest flip I've had in terms of a season of television. Like, and I shouldn't say it, like, I guess I'm overarching everything, right? Like, it's not the whole season is great. It's that this finale to me is a perfect encapsulation of what the show could have been if it was in the hands of the right creators. And I loved the finale. You may feel differently, but I am excited to talk to you about it. So that's just quick, broad. Vinny, what did you think about the finale episode?
Yeah, I thought it was, as a singular episode, definitely one of the better episodes. And I know people are going to hate me for this, especially the Daredevil fanboys. I'm a Daredevil fanboy. But the people who have been raving about Born Again online, they love this episode. It has a 9.1 right now on IMDb. It actually previously was very highly rated. Last time I checked before this, 9.3 on IMDb.
Yeah. That's high praise, dude.
Yeah, very high praise. And as an episode, singular episode, great, good. As a finale, I don't think it does its job as a finale of a season. Am I excited for more? Yes. But I'm left a little dissatisfied. I can't lie.
I think that's fair. Now, and you did say that to me off camera the other night as well.
Yeah.
But, so here's my question for you, and here's my thought process of the way this whole first season of this show has gone.
Yeah.
How do you wrap up something that fundamentally the direction of the show is not agreeing with what came prior, if that makes sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So much of what this episode does, it doesn't retcon what came before. It makes reference to things that happened before. But this is an entirely different show. Like, what we get in this finale, in my opinion, is entirely different creatively than what we saw in episodes. I would even argue 1 through 7. Like, the premiere, I think, is a little bit different the way it's handled. But so that's my question to you. Not that I disagree with what you're saying, because I think what you're saying is completely valid. But how do you judge it based on knowing that it's an entirely different creative team? Because they basically come in and they try to overhaul everything within 2 episodes, you know?
Yeah, that's a big question, you know, how do you judge it? And it's I keep that in mind, and I kept that in mind, and you feel it. So you almost, you're reminded of it because it does feel so different than the episodes 2 through 7. But how I'm going to be judging this is I'm going to be judging it like I judge every other show. If your season of television is fundamentally flawed, then it's fundamentally flawed and it's structured bad. And you know, I respect the creators, and who knows, you know, I've been there as someone who works in film, and as a creator myself, I've been there. As probably stressful as all hell trying to pull this season together with 2 completely different creative teams behind 2 halves of the show. But as a critic, as a reviewer, I am judging it like I judge every other show, and this season as a whole doesn't do its purpose as a season of television. It is so off, So I'm keeping it equal here.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair. You said off camera that the thing is it's entirely an episode based in setup for season 2, which again, if you don't know, it was originally supposed to be one 18-episode miniseries. They decided to split it up. They already announced this officially. Season 2 will premiere in March of 2026. So literally 1 year after we got the premiere of season 1. So having said that, even though it is an episode filled with setup, they do a lot of setting up in the amount of time that some of these other episodes had to tell this overarching story. I think they do a much better job of execution in terms of the setup. Would you agree with that? Or
yeah, I would totally agree with that. Like I said before, it does get me excited for what's to come because it finally feels like there's momentum in the show, and there has been momentum, but we talked about this on previous episodes. It was cut short. It kind of feels like they're starting to run and they fall and they trip and they're getting back up again and they run and they fall and they trip. But this episode, or the previous episode, connecting it back to episode 1, finally feels like a continuous momentum. And this feels like a continuous momentum into season 2, which I really do appreciate. I think the most notable thing is bringing back Bullseye. He's out there now. Fisk kind of being mayor of New York in the most Kingpin way now. Him and Vanessa are finally back together as one unit rather than the conflict of these like almost divorced. They're not divorced yet, but they're like on the brink of it. But now they're
there's
back
assassination attempts too.
Yeah,
it's even more serious than divorce. We get to like murder.
Yeah,
murder.
It happens sometimes when you're in a relationship. Hey man, assassination attempts.
It's craziness.
It's just happens. It's normal stuff. But like going into season 2, it feels like we're at a good place. But then again, like it feels like we should have been at this place at the middle of the season. Punisher coming back is great. And Karen coming back, so good. Yeah, I can't really judge it from there because like it's all set up.
I get it. I think that the biggest thing, so from the business side of it, I feel like the way they probably decided, because I agree with you, it should have been something that was in the middle of the season, building the momentum towards something else.
Yeah.
I think what they decided to do was once they realized they had seen 6 or 7 episodes, they're like, all right, it's not terrible. It's salvageable. We can find a way to redo this and make it better. And I think that if they tried to do more, it would have cost them way too much money. And I think that's inevitably why this is where we ended up, that we get it in these final 2 episodes, and the finale is like stuffed with things. Like it is a lot of setup, but we not only get Karen back, we get Karen back for like an extended period of time. She has multiple scenes. We find out that she's having intimate conversations with Frank.
Yeah,
is what they allude to. They allude to a love triangle between Matt, Karen, and Frank, which boy, oh boy, can't wait to see how that shakes out in season 2.
Yeah.
We get a lot more of Frank. I also realized, and that this is again the filmmaker in us and knowing this information, but it's like we get one scene of Frank from episodes 1 through 8, and it's so obviously something they shot in reshoots because he has a beard. And then he comes back and he has a haircut and no beard. And Matt makes a joke at it, which they typically do with Marvel.
Yeah.
But I recently check out our review on the channel, but I just saw a movie called The Amateur that Mr. Bernthal is in. And his exact look is exactly what he looked like in that earlier episode. So I'm like, yep, he's filming The Amateur. That's what happened.
Yeah.
But we get more of him in this episode. We get the brutality of him. And we actually get a lot of setup for his one shot, his special that he's going to get on Disney Plus, with what he's dealing with. And you called it very early on with the militia, the task force, what they were going to be idolizing and emblematic of that Punisher skull and what that means to them. And you see they try to essentially recruit frank and be like, you don't have to do what you're doing anymore. Like, you don't have to oppose us. Like, we all respect everything you've done. And he goes back to his feelings of people not understanding him. So it's overstuffed with a lot of things. I mean, we get all of that. Like you said, Fisk returns to the Kingpin kind of moniker, and that's kind of where I want to start with you. So much of what we see in Fisk in this episode is entirely different of a performance than we've seen from Vincent D'Onofrio all season long.
Yeah.
And it's brutal, it's cruel, it's graphic as hell. We get maybe, I would say not even maybe, I would say definitely the most graphic scene we've seen in a Marvel project to date. Like an MCU adjacent project, maybe besides, I guess, Deadpool and Wolverine. But
yeah,
what were your thoughts on Kingpin and Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal in this episode, and then maybe the overarching levels to Wilson throughout the season?
I think to answer the first part of that question, I think that scene, super brutal, by far the best scene in this episode, in my opinion. Just so shocking. It finally brings you back to the brutality and the force, the reckoning that Wilson Fisk is. You know, I always remember in the Netflix series one of the first times we see him, he's bashing the guy's head in the car door, or that flashback scene when he kills his father when he's younger, and it's so brutal and disgusting. And we finally get that here again, and it got me really excited to see what is to come for Fisk, because it finally feels like he's back to being Fisk, because there's been a lot of moments in this entire season where he feels very
like he's restrained, and I get it. You know, his whole character arc is he's a mayor now and he has to be restrained, and he's not used to that. But there has been a lot of moments in this season so far where he's felt like a crybaby and like felt very awkward. And now that's the thing, though, is that it's a part of his character that he's a little bit of like, he throws tantrums, right? He's not emotionally mature. He still has that angry boy inside of him who killed his father when he was younger. So I get it, but I still do believe that there are a lot of moments that feel a little too awkward for his character throughout the season, and this episode kind of reverts that and makes me feel at peace now again with his character, and like he feels intimidating again. And that's what I think I was missing, that word, is that like he wasn't really feeling intimidating for me until last episode and totally this episode. And I think that answers, and I think that answers that. I forget if you had a second part to that question. I was saying him across the whole season, but you kind of picked up on that. I agree with what you're saying. It's almost like they were minimizing him as a character throughout this season. Like they were making him feel smaller, even though Kingpin is supposed to be so physical and stature and in nature. And I do think my biggest gripe with this episode specifically kind of goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, but it's like, it's hard because you have to judge it based on the overall aspect of the season. Like, we're here to not only discuss the episode, but the season at length. And there are certain things that they have to rush through or they can't explain because they need to do so much heavy lifting in the finale. Like, he is aware that Vanessa is behind his assassination attempt. He says it to her. And that's kind of all we get in terms of that. And he just immediately goes to, we need to take out all vigilantes. And it's like, how did he get from point A to point B without more of explanation? Like, it's just like he goes from 0 to 100, like immediately. And there's no tension building as the season goes on, because as you said, like, you're not seeing that same version of Wilson throughout the season. So I think that unfortunately doesn't come across until like we just, again, it's like turning a switch on, right? It's like an example of something where you kind of see something bubble over is like Kristen Miliotti's character in like The Penguin. You know, like you see it like tick, 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 and it's building and it's building and it's building. And this is a character that's already established. Like, we know Kingpin, we know what he's capable of. And like you said, it's obvious that he goes from being a mafioso to a political figure.
Yeah.
And he has to, I guess, kind of hold that back and restrain himself, but then to just switch on a dime because of an assassination attempt that he is aware of who is responsible for it. It's like the political pivoting is interesting to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. I see that. I don't know. I think still as a singular episode, it still fulfills its job better than the previous episodes, but I do 100% agree with you that the pivoting felt awkward, I guess you'd say, right? I do want to talk. I want to pivot the conversation, though. Speaking of pivoting, I want to pivot the conversation because honestly, one of my biggest issues with this season and this episode has been the presentation of things. You know, how the directors decided to go about certain editing choices with their editors, certain cinematography choices with their cinematographers, and just the overall presentation. I enjoyed the Punisher Task Force Daredevil fight in the apartment. I think that was pretty badass. Was not a fan of the slow-mo. Way too much slow. It started to really piss me off. I'm like, why is everything slow-mo? It just felt really corny to me. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I didn't notice it at first because I think we have a review of this up on the channel, but like it's like once you sat through Rebel Moon.
Yeah, well, that's literally what I was getting reminded of. Yeah, I was like, this feels like Zack Snyder.
It definitely didn't. It wasn't that. Again, I'd have to probably I've only watched the episode once. I do want to watch it again, but I didn't get that feeling from it. I feel like they must have intercut some real-time fight choreography within it. But thinking back, there were moments where it was like, okay. But I think part of that also was because of we're so aware of what they can do with Daredevil and what they have done with Daredevil with like the one takes and like being in contained spaces and keeping like the camera like following. You know what I mean? Like I think that was one of the biggest praises that people had for the original Daredevil series is that you had that element of it. And then this show, it's almost like it's too glossy at times. Like they want to put like a Disney shine on it. You know what I mean? And it's not as gritty.
Yeah. And that's why I say presentation, because it's since episode 1, it's felt too glossy for me. Even just in general, like a lot of the decisions made. I think a lot of the decisions, we talked about the lighting, right? They used a lot of these neon lights for like exaggerated emotions at times. You have the red on Daredevil. They do that multiple times throughout the season. You have the violet on Bullseye. I think that's cool. That's actually, it's unique. It's cool. But when it comes to stuff like the excessive digital compositing in the choreography and the so much slow-mo, I noticed it was only on Frank, you know, when the Punisher is fighting. So maybe there was a conscious decision behind the slow-mo, but for me, it wasn't. Like the choreography is good, but it's not so good to the point where it's like, I need to see this in slow-mo over and over.
Well, we get it. We get more slow-mo with Frank too when he's fighting the task force. Correct?
Yeah.
So maybe it is a Punisher specific thing that they're doing. Have you watched the Punisher series in Netflix?
I watched half of it.
And I've watched some of it too, but they don't do that in the Netflix series, right?
No.
Okay. No. Interesting. It is an interesting choice. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, they are using it in interesting places because they didn't even do that with Daredevil across the rest of the which again, I guess it was a different team.
Yeah.
And we get no action sequences in. But wait, did we? When Daredevil jumps in front of the bullet, is that in slow motion too? I'm like thinking
that is in slow motion.
So maybe it's a directorial choice. Maybe it's a Benson and Moorhead kind of thing.
I think it is. I think because it is obviously their flair. I'm not a big fan of it,
which is fine.
Honest. I think slow-mo is cool when it's done really right. And at first I was like, oh shit, Frank's in slow-mo. But then he's in slow-mo more and more. And I'm like, wait, are we gonna like actually see the fight? Or is it just gonna be like And then the terrible ADR of just like, oh, CGI blood splatter when he shoots the guys, like, which is like, I get it. I'm a creator. I get it, and it might seem like nitpicking, but it's just like the CGI blood. Like, this is gonna be so nitpicky, but like shit like that has been consistent throughout the season. Where it's like, why would it looks bad? Why even have it? Like, you don't even need a CGI blood splatter like that when he shoots him. Like, you know what I mean?
And we talked about this early on. I do think so much of it is the unfortunate reality of we're always going to be comparing it to what came before it. But it's inevitable. Like, we have to discuss that part of it. And I think the presentation might be the biggest problem going forward with these stories in this Hell's Kitchen. You know what I mean? Like, doing these stories in a more gritty and grounded way, like across Marvel. Like, I don't Netflix, and it's interesting because part of it with Netflix too is that they've talked about this, like they didn't get a lot of money for those shows. So it's almost like they had to do what they could do because it was saving them money. You know what I mean? To not use CGI and not do things like that. And then see, with this episode, I felt like there were moments that felt very comic booky, and I kind of liked it. But I understand because so much of what we got before that was more gritty and it was more low budget. Yeah. So it's hard to compare the two, you know?
Yeah. And I want to kind of briefly, the cinematographer for the season was Hilary Fife-Spura. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she's had a very unique flair to the entire season. She uses a lot of really like really sharp key lights, backlights. Most significantly, you really notice it when the characters are always placed next to windows, and she's always blasting really bright lights through the windows, and gives them a really like sharp key. And that's usually how she lights all of her subjects throughout the entire season. And I've appreciated her visual look as a cinematographer. I actually do really like it. I think she's talented. However, and this episode looks great. And I really don't mean to nitpick, because I don't mean this as like negativity towards her, because she's clearly a talented cinematographer. But the scene where Frank fights the task force, not a big fan. Going back to the presentation of that entire scene, and I mention her because the cinematography is involved in probably the most clearest part, when he's sitting down in the chair and it looks really artificially lit. Like extremely artificially lit. Like it looks, I wasn't a fan of that. And I think why I'm bringing that up is to kind of conclude my point of like the glossy presentation. I'm just not a big fan of.
Yeah, you know? And I think that's totally fair. I think that it's obviously a different mentality with where they're going to go. I am curious, and I'm excited to see what they do with a full season. With this creative team being there for a full season and what that looks like. But there's still things that we're going to have to wait and see, obviously, what happens. One of the positive things that I want to touch on, though, we've talked a little bit about Frank, but the way that Frank was reintroduced, I love his scene with Matt in the apartment.
Oh yeah,
I the writing in this episode. I think is probably the strongest it's been all season. Like I think it was episode 6. Yeah, I think it was episode 6 where we said the structure and the writing of the season. We're like, what is happening here? We're like, they're just telling us everything. They're not showing us anything. Yeah. This, we're getting like character moments, like with Frank especially, like. He's delivering these lines that like feel like ripped out of like, that's Frank Castle. Like that's something that Frank would say, you know, in the relationship between him and Matt, which I'm sure that whoever wrote this scene probably wrote the scene from episode 3 that they had together. You know what I mean? It feels like it's ripped from a different show. It feels like it's an entirely different writer.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. I love the moment when, like you mentioned before, he's just sitting there in the kitchen very ominously, very like Winter Soldier-esque in Captain America the Winter Soldier, when Bucky's just like sitting down. I love that moment because, you know, they bust a joke about how he's got the shave and the haircut for him and then Frank mentions how he has no coffee in the house. And then that plays back into when they're in the kind of fallout shelter that Frank is huddled up in. And he asks, "Oh, you guys want coffee?" Like little stuff like that is really charming.
It's character moments.
Oh yeah,
it's building a character actually, like and really and they managed to do that in like one episode.
Yeah,
with Frank, reintroduce Frank, I guess.
And I think it's done well. I think it's done really well.
I agree. Yeah. Karen coming back, big thing. The heart, the soul of this series, the heart and soul of Daredevil, and John touched upon that heavily in when we did the premiere of the first 3 episodes. Are you happy she's back, and what do you think going into season 2? What we can expect with? Seems like she's fully back in the fold. She's obviously back now. She's in New York with Matt and Frank and everybody else.
Yeah, and that gets me really excited because I 100% agree. I think Karen is one of the best characters in this show or in the Daredevil universe. She's incredible. She's like, if you've seen season 3 and that solo episode all about Karen's backstory, it is incredible. It's such a beautiful, such a heartbreaking episode. So I'm so glad she's back. And I hope they give her a lot of agency. I don't want her to be kind of a background lack of agency. Like, she has proven herself to be a extremely actionary character, especially in the later halves of the Netflix series. So have her do that. Have her be actionary. Have her, obviously we see a little bit of it. She's going out with Daredevil to scout Red Hook towards the later half of this episode. So, but I want to see more of that, Obviously, we'll have to wait till season 2.
We're going to have 9 episodes. They're going to have 9 hours to try to do this for us and make it. And which, again, if you treat it like, that's how I feel like I'm going to look at it for next year. Like, we're a year away, but it's like, I'm going to look at it as like, all right, let's go 1, 8, 9, 10 through 18. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I'm going to look at it. Like, whatever else was in that are just like these kind of footnotes of building up to the story. Like, the crazy thing is, and we were complaining about this, and it's still a complaint. We'll get to it when we get to our final scores and things. But like, the Muse storyline just didn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Like, you could have just done any other villain. It kind of just connected the seriousness of why it was a political issue and it was a Daredevil issue. But they could have done that with anybody. Like, they could have done that with literally anybody. I almost wish, and I wonder, so excuse me if I'm incorrect, like if this is the wrong way to bring this up, because I don't know. I wonder if it was initially going to be something with White Tiger, and then the actor Kamar de los Reyes passed away.
Oh yeah,
which is possible.
Yeah.
Because White, I mean, he was great in the 2 episodes he's in. He's fantastic in the show, and we get a great callback where Matt's kind of thinking about the reality of this great man who is just killed because he wants to do good in the world. Yeah. Which is still the theme of Daredevil through and through. Like, it's the theme of the Netflix show. It is the see-through, the through line through this show is good and evil. I mean, that's a lot of comic book things, but it's inherently apparent with Daredevil and the juxtaposition between Matt and Kingpin. We end up back with Matt fully embracing Daredevil by the end of this episode. So much so that he's kind of letting things slip with Heather when he's in the bed. And Kirsten is also like kind of having an understanding of like, all right, like maybe she knows something that we don't know. Or I don't think she's in the bar at the end when they show him in the bar when he's got like kind of his crew around him. I know Cherry's there, the bartender's there. I don't remember if Kirsten's in there or not.
I forget.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm curious. Yeah. Like, we haven't talked a lot about the titular character of this show in the finale, Daredevil.
Yeah.
And by the end, it lives out. He's born again. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is Daredevil through and through. This is giving us an understanding of like, this is where he's at now. What are your thoughts on Matt in this episode and kind of where he gets to, and maybe what is the future with him and Heather, especially now that Karen's kind of back?
Yeah, I like it. I do. I think this is a new thing for Matt because now we leave off right on that moment of like, hey, Daredevil and his persona as Daredevil is now going to be a shared thing, right? It's not going to be this isolating solo man mission to save the city. He has to build an army, And into doing so, he needs to kind of remove his mask, metaphorically and literally, to have them trust him. And he brings together all these closest people in his life. And now it's like a shared thing. In a way, it kind of reminds me of, just because I'm such a huge Batman fan, the Bat Family. Of, Batman is the solo mission. But then Robin comes along and he realizes that, this Batman can be a shared thing. And the idea of Batman doesn't have to be a solo thing. And matter of fact, the solo thing is quite self-destructive. Mm-hmm. And it grows. The Bat Family becomes huge and it becomes a family.
Yeah. So
in a sense, I'm getting the same vibes here, where it's going to be like a family in a sense.
Yeah.
Not that everyone's going to be in spandex and whatnot.
Well, I was going to say, it's almost like what they do with Nolan's Bat Family. It's like Lucius, the role that Lucius plays. It's like, can be compared to like what Cherry acts as for Matt. And again, you have Alfred and what he's able to do with Michael Caine's character. And eventually in Rises, you get Anne Hathaway's Catwoman. Like, it's a similar kind of vibe with him bringing these people together for an overall greater purpose. And they're going to get to the bottom of the Foggy thing. And I do think it's going to be really conclusive. And I do think that Kingpin's role going forward is going to be significant because he's now acting as the mayor of one of the biggest cities in the country. And people have been speculating this, but like, we're MCU adjacent now. Like, Spider-Man's there.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's there. And Spider-Man has a lot of connection with Daredevil. He has a lot of connection with Kingpin. So who knows?
Supposedly, though, because Sony owns the rights, he can't show up in Disney Plus TV shows.
Fuck you, Sony.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Sony.
But I don't know. Maybe they worked out a mutual agreement behind the scenes. We have no idea. He could have shown up, or he may show up, and I think it would be awesome.
It would be great.
Yeah.
The thing I saw something recently that said that I don't think that Kingpin can appear in movies.
Oh, okay.
Which would suck.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how are we connecting these two if that is the case?
Yeah.
Because he's only been in series.
Yeah.
Right? To my knowledge.
Yeah.
We have Matt in Spider-Man No Way Home, but we don't have Fisk. There's not even mention of Fisk in any of the movies.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't want to get too off topic.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
With Spider-Man,
I'm speculating.
Yeah, well, I totally get that. With Spider-Man, though, I remember you told me that they confirmed it to be a multiverse story, which I'm not excited for. I wanted it to be street level. No Way Home ended of like, hey guys, we're bringing Spider-Man back to his roots. It's gonna be a street level Spider-Man. But it seems like we're pivoting again. Oh, multiverse again. So it's like, it's a little annoying because I wanted to see Spider-Man duel it out with Kingpin or team up with Spider-Man or team up with Daredevil and whatnot.
What about Matt? Yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on this portrayal of Matt across this season?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Sorry. So my final conclusion was that I actually did really enjoy Matt throughout the season. I think it was a stronger point. I raved on our previous episodes about the whole philosophy about battling the system versus being with the system. Episode 4 did that so well. And I think that might be one of my favorite episodes when it came to the character of Matt Murdock throughout season 1. And then I also love that at the end of this, although Daredevil is born again, in a sense, Matt Murdock dies for Daredevil to be born again, which is interesting because we start the season with Daredevil dying for Matt Murdock to be born again. So it's because, and I say that because his whole life falls apart. There's no way Matt Murdock is going back to be like, all right, guys, we're returning to law again, right? No,
we shouldn't. I mean, we shouldn't return back to that. I don't think at this point.
And it makes no sense. Like, he has a literal task force after him. They know Matt Murdock he can't be in the public eye anymore. Fisk is hunting him down, and for me, the visual representation of Matt Murdock dying was them blowing up the apartment. It's like they blew up his life.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's no more like is Heather gonna walk into the apartment? Oh my god! It's fucking burned down to a crisp. Like, where's Matt? Right.
So here's my thing though too, because we talked about this last week. The unfortunate reality is that the best version of Matt Murdock is a Matt Murdock that's struggling.
Yeah.
Right. Like we need to see Daredevil at his worst. We're gonna need to end up at a place again where he's gonna need more loss at some point. And it's like, can they achieve that with Heather or Karen? I mean, Karen, I feel like it's established. It would suck if they killed Karen off. I don't think they would, but it's like, how do we get back there with Heather then? You know, we're like we're not going to kill off Daredevil by the end of season 2. I would be very, very surprised if they did that.
Yeah.
But how do you think they kind of lean into that for season 2, or is it a full hero story?
I honestly think there will definitely be internal conflict. I feel now that we have our pseudo, let's call them the pseudo Daredevil army family, right? Now that we have them, I feel like that gives us enough emotional foundation for there to be a lot of internal conflict. You know, it doesn't have to be Karen. It doesn't even have to be Heather, you know, but now we have Josie and Cherry and everyone else that was in the bar at the end. They are a part of this now. So they are risking their lives, essentially. If you're going to team up with Daredevil, you are putting your life on the line. So I think that's going to give a lot of struggle to Matt, because now he has a lot of people who are a lot more vulnerable than him. You know, they don't have super senses like he does.
Yeah.
They're just kind of more ordinary people. So I think that's where season 2, if they hit the nail in the right place, they can really like nail it.
Yeah.
And that's going to provide a lot of internal conflict.
We need to see the ensemble shine.
Yeah.
We talked about how like they were underwriting the ensemble basically the whole season.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't go that direction. I feel like they really don't have time to waste.
Yeah.
We got 9 episodes once we start season 2. So
yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch upon? We've pretty much talked about the whole episode. I feel.
Yeah, I didn't really have much else to say, to be honest.
Are we ready for scores?
I'm ready.
Here's a big thing. So again, we've been talking. I'm curious. I'm very curious on what your score is going to be. But like we were talking about this off camera, I think after episode 7, and I was like, my score, the final 2 episodes would have to be so significant for me to change it to the score. And I gave you like a range where my score was. And I think I ended up at the highest end that I could based on the final 2 episodes. So I'll start. I'll give my score first.
Yeah, go for it.
Overall, I think that there are a lot of strong points in this season. But I think the structure, the pacing, the editing, and at times, unfortunately, the writing do suffer at times.
Yeah.
I think they end up in a great place, though. And I think how I started this episode of our podcast, I've never been so split, because it's like you were talking about how you're like, well, half the season. It's like, it's more than half the season, you know, like more than half the season is underwhelming at times. And if you go back to my positive reaction to the beginning of this season, I think that the middle part of the season is where you really lose me. And the whole Muse storyline is not great. And Heather doesn't really get a lot to do, even though they try to make her have something to do. But I think the final 2 episodes are so strong, and it is, like you said, it's a lot of setup. It doesn't get us a conclusion for anything in season 1. We just know that the commissioner's dead. We know that there's a lot of people on Wilson's side. It's basically like political Avengers is where we're at, you know. And I do love a political story. I love the story of what happens between Daredevil and Fisk, and then we have Poindexter kind of out there, which is great as like a turning point. But long-winded way to say, I'm going to give this season a 7. I'm going to give Daredevil Born Again a 7. I know a lot of people might hate me in the comments, but I am curious to hear your guys' thoughts on why you would give it the score you give it. But I think the finale, if I was just scoring the finale, I'd probably give it like a 9. But the whole season overall, I can't go higher than a 7. So that's where I'm at.
I'm gonna give Daredevil Born Again season 1 a 6.
Okay, yeah, you're a little lower than I was.
It's a strong 6 though, because it's not a -6. It's like I don't think it's to the point. I just felt fine about it. You know, it was fine, but it has exceptional moments, like literally incredible moments throughout the season. But the lows for me were a little too low, so that's why I bring it down a lot.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Regardless, we are big Marvel fans. We are big Daredevil fans. So we're excited to see what they decide to do with season 2. We'll be back next year to discuss all of Daredevil Born Again season 2. But let us know in the comments, what are your guys' thoughts on the season overall? Did you guys like the finale, the way they handled it? What are some of your predictions and theories on season 2? We'd love to have a conversation with you guys in the comments. If you can give this video a like, we really appreciate it. We have tons of other Marvel content as well on our channel, so hit that subscribe button. We have reviews for Captain America Brave New World we already did. We have Thunderbolts upcoming. We have Fantastic Four First Steps upcoming. Tons of other Disney Plus shows for Marvel coming this year. Later we got Wonder Man. We have Ironheart, animated shows. So check out our stuff on X-Men 97. We did a lot of coverage on that last year, and can't wait for that to come back. I think it's next year it comes back as well. So hit that subscribe button for all Marvel stuff. We cover other stuff as well. We have reviews up for other television shows, other movies, so be sure to look at that. You guys can also see all of our social media content. All that stuff is below me in the video right now. It's also in our YouTube description. We're everywhere and anywhere. So just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
And I'm Vinny Albano.
And we will see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.